anytime that we're changing, transforming, we're letting something go, shedding away something. Ultimately, just like the chrysalis and the butterfly coming out of that, we are shifting into another dimension of ourselves, another state of consciousness.
Welcome to a world filled with challenges, temptations, and a barrage of distractions. In the midst of chaos, where misinformation abounds, we're here to be your beacon of inspiration. Welcome to Optimum Ideation Podcast, where we dive deep into the teachings of great leaders to illuminate the path to a better society. In a quest for the best of human ideation, we're on a relentless pursuit to unearth the most profound insights that can elevate humanity. At Optimum Ideation, our mission is clear: to share invaluable knowledge with the future leaders of the world, empowering them to navigate the complexities of an unjust world. Sometimes all we need is a spark of inspiration or a fresh perspective to shift our focus. Join us as we delve into the profound reasons behind human behavior, offering tricks to save time, hacks to optimize your operating system, and unveiling captivating discoveries from the greatest thought leaders of our time. Optimum Ideation isn't just a podcast, it's a journey into the heart of human potential. Get ready for a roller coaster ride of inspiration, insight, and innovation. Human's best ideation awaits you at Optimum Ideation, where brilliance knows no bounds. The best of human ideation. Welcome, everybody, to Optimum Ideation Podcast. And today's guest is Esperanza Smith, and she joins us from PureEsperanza, and she's doing wonderful things as far as helping others, and that's what this program's all about. Thanks for coming today.
Hey, Tim, thanks so much for having me. It's really a pleasure. It's been great getting to know you and know a little bit about the work that you're doing. And just want to share a little bit about what's going on for us. Thank you for hosting this and letting us share it with others. So a little bit about my background is I'm an energy medicine practitioner and a holistic educator. My life has been a journey of studying all different types of holistic education. And I was a Waldorf teacher in Waldorf education, if you're not familiar with that, which is really based on human development. But my whole path has been studying spiritual modalities as well as spiritual science. And, it took me through social services and education and led me to raising a family, all those kinds of things that are all integral parts of how we grow and learn, and brought me to wanting to bring about the creation of PureEsperanza, which is our nonprofit. Now, that was actually a vision I had at about 18, and it was an idea of a holistic center. And about every decade or so, I lived in different locations. I would wonder if that was where it was and how it was going to come about. And when it finally came to fruition, and we went ahead and established it as a nonprofit in 2019. We were in Chicago. We thought it was going to happen there, and ended up with COVID, and that changed a lot of things. But what it did do is bring us into new ideas and how to anchor this in not just an international platform. I like to think of it is an international platform and global, but I like to think of it now as universal, because that's really what we're now encountering, that we're stretching beyond boundaries of physical space, and we're reaching into new dimensions. So we're really looking at anchoring that in the metaverse, and that'll be a little bit different, but the platform itself is really based with international educators, leaders, holistic practitioners, and healers and artists that all are of this like mind in a way to help advance consciousness or expand it. and meeting everybody just where they're at, becoming a vessel for allowing opportunities and facilitating experiences for people to find their way into a greater understanding of themselves, and ultimately that they are the creators of their own life.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, that's such a cool background. It's such a cool direction to go. And so I really, thought this would be a great conversation for our podcast, because I'm like kind of like a master of all these general things and master of none type of guy, one of those type of guys. But I really like the aspect of the metaverse that you brought up, and using that for your program. So
yeah, I think that it is something that we feel connected with as far as the future and the generations to come.
yeah.
I think that the work that we do here on the earth and service is short-lived in the kind of macrocosm of life, and generationally speaking, what we can leave for the others is really, I think, how we can serve in a way that continues to speak and live. And obviously we know of those things from our own lives and looking back at past things that have influenced us. And that's what we hope to do for the future generations at a time when technology, I think, will be even more of a daily experience and a daily immersion, how to create a space and an anchoring for them to still connect with the natural world. Yeah. So we really come with it with wanting to use ancient wisdoms from what speaks from our ancestors and previous, our lineage, all the different cultures of the world, and then moving that forward in a way that preserves and continues to carry on those messages of wisdom.
Amazing. Now, through this journey that you've been on, what layers did you have to reveal to become who you are now?
Well, as a person individually, I think that that's, the story for all of us. It's a life journey. And I think that for most of us, we're finding that we have awakenings and transformations. And along the way, sometimes we waken them sooner or later, after a repeat of lessons, so to speak. Yeah. But I think that for myself personally, I always feel that, I wrote a book called Girls Seeking Pearls. And in that story, it was kind of a chronicle and an autobiography in a way of this third person, which is really an archetype of my own self, but it's a soul, and journeying and finding these different passages of life. And through these passages, I think of them as rites of passage. And for me, they were initiations, different actually death initiations. And, that's kind of like a woo word for many people and carries a lot of different connotations, but I view it as part of that cycle of life. And in my own practices of shamanistic journeying and energy medicine, it's just a continuum of life itself. And so
she emerges, the tapestry of her journey woven into the fabric she wears. TGC Fashion presents the winter collection, where the urban landscape becomes a runway. In every stride, a story is told. From the city's rhythm to the untamed symphony of the mountains, she rises, a beacon of strength against the canvas of the winter's embrace. In the cold winds, she finds warmth. In the shadows, she becomes the light. It's not just about clothing. It's about an attitude, a narrative, a woman redefining the season. Alter your closet's DNA. Each piece, a genetic code of style, designed to transform not just what you wear, but who you are. It's not just fashion, it's an identity. TGC Fashion, where every outfit is a new chapter, and every woman is the author of her own story. Together, we alter the genetic sequence of fashion.
Anytime that we're changing, transforming, we're letting something go, shedding away something. Ultimately, just like the chrysalis and the butterfly coming out of that, we are shifting into another dimension of ourselves, another state of consciousness. And that awareness that we have, the lessons that we've learned, we can say is part of that consciousness. We can all look back at some point of life and be like, yeah, I did that. maybe it was a great experience, maybe it wasn't a great experience, but either way, there's something that you gained or gleaned from it. And if you can view life as everything that's coming from your experiences and gleaning something from it, then it's leaving you a gift. And that's that consciousness. As soon as you can perceive in that way that there's a gift there, that's consciousness expanding. And so I feel like there were lots of layers of that in my own transformation, and coming through all the roles and identities that we play, we might be really connected in this, there's nothing wrong with that, but we learn through the way we connect with and even attach ourselves to identities, be it that for myself being a career person, an educator, helping others, serving other people, raising my own family, becoming a mother, becoming a grandmother, becoming a wife, all those kinds of things were things that helped me learn on my journey. And I feel that, sometimes there were difficult lessons, with those parts and roles that we play, until we come to these places where we begin to see that there's still something greater inside that's not necessarily the role. These are just expressions and extensions of that consciousness. But ultimately, there's something deeper inside, and that this way of not just doing, and I've served a lot, but doing isn't always just what we come for. We come to also be. And that was, I think, the biggest layer that I had to work through, which is I've been very successful for a very long time at doing and bringing things about, through my action and my goals and my objectives and my plans and all those kinds of things. And at some point it was like, it's all got to go away. And it was terrifying, in many ways, because what does it mean to be?
Yeah.
And I made choices to actually step back and live a part of my life. When I thought my first husband and I thought to bring our fourth child here. And that was, so we decided that we were going to conceive and have our fourth child. And there was a 10-year span. And in my mind, I was like, I want this to be different. I want to be a different kind of mother or a different kind of person than like working and teaching and caring for all these other students and things. I want to just really hone down and work with my family and the land. And we were doing some sustainable farming and off the grid kind of thing. And there was a lot of power and peace and all of that, but there was also a lot of churning and bringing up stuff. And if you could imagine, you're tilling a garden and you're bringing up the dirt, it's like you're digging deep and you're having to turn it over and you're wanting, and you're preparing it, you're fertilizing, at that moment. But there's stuff that has to come up, So for everyone out there, your listeners and everything, the turmoil that we go through, the changes that we go through, the discomfort that we go through, that's all part of it. But I think no one tells us along the way that, like, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, it's okay. And I love that famous quote by Thich Nhat Hanh. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. But he's the one individual who talks about like no mud, no lotus. It's like you got to be able to like get in there and do that work, and then that's how you can bring about more beauty in your life, more joy in your life, more peace in your life, more love in your life. All those kinds of things that are these natural states of our own being.
Right.
And they're not attached to the external things, So we find that, it's a pretty wonderful transformation. Every one of us is doing it in our own way. We can all find compassion and empathy and resonation, even if we don't agree with all the external situations, conditions, people, all those kinds of things. But every single human being here is doing that, is doing that in their own way. And it's real, it's real and relevant in their own life. And so when we can find that reflection in one another, I think that we come from a stronger place as far as our humanity goes, and being able to expand that in a positive way and in a constructive way for the future.
Yeah. A few years ago, we had sold our house in the city in Houston, and we moved out to Bandera, which is outside of San Antonio, and we were living right on a river. And so it's the first time in my life that we were so far out in the country, and we had the kids, my wife, and she was kind of a city person, but we started growing our own vegetables and things out there, and spending a lot of time on the river, and just being that in tune with nature was just like such a healing for me. Just all the painful things that I've been through in life, like I feel like I was able to just shed so many layers out there and just find a peace that I never had before. I was able to finally nip drinking in the butt, and just not even want to have a drink or beer or anything. And that had been something that plagued my family for generations.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's just like, finding that peace and that focus. It's like you just want everyone to have that, or at least find that at some point in their life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we're all doing that. I mean, I feel like most of us on a day-to-day basis aren't thinking of how we're connected with everything. We can sit and become still. And that's why I think mindful practices and meditation and all those kinds of things can help us find that stillness, and we find a greater connection within, which ultimately connects us like with everything. That's the quantum part of all that consciousness. But on a day-to-day basis, when we're going about our day, we're not always thinking like, how are my actions or my thoughts and my feelings are contributing to all the energy around me and all those kinds of things. But I think what you just said is really poignant in terms of you felt this shedding and releasing, and there was an uplifting that happened for you. You being one of many, but many people are doing that. And we don't see how that's affecting you. Sharing your story and all those kinds of things are part of that, and how it expands out and amplifies out. Just that courage to do that, face those shadows that we have, to shed, to heal, all those kinds of things. And we all are doing that. Every one of us is contributing to that whole collective, and that there isn't anything that we do or don't do that isn't somehow interconnected with life and life around us. So we see it in our immediate circles perhaps, and sometimes we don't even see it in our immediate circles, but I have older children, and things that I experienced that were hard, and everybody that's a parent here knows. I always think like when just a quick story about that, like when you're a mom, and I remember seeing moms that had older children, like teenagers or college age students, and I had my little ones that 5 years old or whatever, and seeing a different look on their face, like and I see it now with my son. My son is that way with his child, and we have several grandchildren, so I see where they're at in terms of how they perceive their life and what's going on right around them. And they're going to go through things with their children, just like I did, like you're going to, all of us do. So anybody on that track of having a family knows what that is. And we don't always see on a day-to-day basis what's happening, but then it's amazing to have adult children, or have your children as parents, and be in communication with them and be sharing the experiences that you didn't even know somehow affected them negatively or positively, and the learning that comes out of that. It's like another layer on top of like what you went through. And back then it was just day-to-day stuff you were doing. You weren't necessarily, in that part of what came out of it. But that's how we're affecting lives all the time,
Right.
work relationships, people that we meet on the street, strangers, and we all know it. We all feel it, like when we come around someone that's positive. I mean, I've been in the city now for a while too, in Philadelphia, in Detroit, in Chicago, and I lived for a period of time around LA and New York City too. And when you enter the space of someone that's just got a positive feeling about them, you feel it. It might be just a smile exchange while you're on a commuter bus, or a train,
Yeah.
and you feel that. And that could have been that person shedding something at that moment, or just holding a moment of like joy, remembering something, or having come from an experience that was just joyful, but that emits through us. These are the kind of invisible qualities that exist energetically. And this is a lot of, I think, what we're coming to, whether in every sector, and, with PureEsperanza, we have that model of 6 intersectional pieces of living. So we see it as a crossover, whether it's through education, through healing, through arts, through business, through environment and social global awareness. We see that there's a cross section for all of us, and how we engage in these different parts or components of life, and how they carry over. And there's a cross section that they carry over from. So, you were talking a perfect example about how you were on the land and you were growing your own food, and you had this connection. Well, there was a piece of you that was connected there. And I'm sure you probably felt that ease of what was there on the land. That was the land gifting you. Our ancient ancestors perceived that as reciprocity, as a way that this exchange was happening. We gave thanks, the land gave to us, and we lived in harmony, and there was an exchange that was going continually that way. And that inevitably, somebody could be focused on, this is environment, I want to do something good for the environment, I want to grow organic or grow my own food, all that. But the other side of it is the healing aspect. So that's one of the intersections that we see, like between environment and healing. So you were also healing yourself, be it that it was in your mind, be it was in your emotional world. You talked about, letting go, being able to shed of, drinking or whatever that was. But all of us have our different things that we're, connected to, attached to, addicted to, whatever, all those kinds of things. And so that release that happened, it was a healing for you. And there's a cross section there between the environment and between the healing that went on. We can even get in deeper and talk about literally what was happening energetically to you on that healing, and the kind of foods that you were eating, because that begins to heal us at that cellular level.
Yeah.
When we're talking about our gut, I mean, our body responds. It's got, receptors and signals that respond not only inwardly from like what our brain is signaling us, but from the environment around us, which is connected to our brain and how it functions in our gut, in our heart, in our literal physical brain, and all the way through us. So there is a real connection there that happens, I think, with nature. But we have so many other connections, and that's the time that we're in right now. We're seeing this consciousness expansion that's happening. So now we have thought leaders and leaders in businesses and CEOs of corporations that are now starting to go like, wait, how do I connect? So we're not just a machine moving, but how do we connect from a more human aspect, and how do we engage so that work is meaningful and purposeful? And,
Right.
how do we view the people that work for us, and how do we lead people in this responsible and effective way so that people actually feel a more harmonious state about all their interactions between work and home? Because ultimately, I always kind of chuckle when I hear that work-life balance, and that's, been so prominent. And, that's a consciousness shift, though. I mean, there was a time when people that, work didn't have the consciousness they wanted a work-life balance. It was just about go, 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 or, what the bottom line was, but that in itself, work-life balance, life is work, work is life. There is, it's one beautiful thing. I once had a mentor who told me that, all of your life is working. You want to get up to prepare a meal for yourself, you have to work to do that. Then you want to clean it up so you have your dishes available for the next time you're going to cook, or even bathe yourself, to clean yourself. There's a certain amount of quote unquote work. And so when we work with the idea of, what is work, and even the transformation of that mindset about work, and it not, we've had previous generations that worked hard and there was like drudgery involved in all of that, or laborious, working hard. We still see so many of those kinds of quotes, like struggle, work harder, all that kind of stuff. It's like this more of a being with what we attend to during the course of the day, in a mindful way, in a conscious way, so that we really can be free to live and breathe and create and love and find all these things that resonate with us. And we know, because it's as simple as feeling really good inwardly, from within out.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work just to get to that point where you can just feel good, And if you get to a spot where you can do that, it almost means nothing if you can't share it. If you can't teach others, it almost means nothing, you know. I don't know if you've experienced that.
Well, I think the part of when we serve others, of course, it speaks directly to that part of interconnecting us. That's what all life is that way. We're interconnected. We're coming more into that consciousness and into that awareness, which is almost like full circle, because I believe that, ancestrally speaking, the indigenous and ancient civilizations, they had a lot of that built in already. There were so many cultures that had a collective mindset, and it's almost as if though the evolutionary stages of humans had to shift from this group consciousness into this individualized consciousness, which brought us into this individualization, which we are in, and which we're still going to be in for a period of time, but we're circling back around to being like, oh, well, how do we connect each other? And, we can all probably find ways that the pandemic brought some of that into our awareness. And, whether people were experiencing isolation and then appreciating what it was to be connected, all of those kinds of things, there's just so many ways that we come to learn that. But I think that ultimately, that interconnection is a very important piece to the whole thing, that we find that daily in how we move and live and breathe with our experiences, and with sharing it with one another, so that we can experience that greater expansion. Because I think that's what happens. I think, we share a little bit of this, it resonates, and we go, oh yeah, and then maybe we have a little bit more courage to do a little bit more of that, what feels good, because we have so many programs, so many, internal programs that go on and on. And so just that unspoken permission to share that joy, and to allow that to go into other people's experiences, and to even into their imaginations,
Exactly.
And I mean, I find that, even when we hear stories, read stories, even in this day and age, where we're, so visual, and, all the things that we see or whatever, but there's so many things that are inspiring, and we get to choose, and we get to pick those kinds of things, so I would encourage people that, in your choices, choose wisely. I wouldn't, I'm not an advocate for, a proponent for, like, disconnecting from all the, news that's out there, whatever. It's life, it exists, it's out there. But how we also fill our life with all the things that are beautiful, that's that art piece that I see as that intersectional piece with what we're doing with PureEsperanza, that you can experience beauty, you can experience that joy, not have to come to it from a thinking place, like, oh, I'm going to read something inspiring, I'm going to listen to a lecture that's inspiring. You might just like sit in nature, you might sit in a gallery, or I love going to the museum sometimes and sitting there. I love being at a concert, all different kinds of musics and genres. It's not like there's no cornerstone on how you get to experience joy and how you get to elevate consciousness. It's literally, it just is. Every day, in every way, all you have to do is tune in. The more you begin to tune in that way, then it's always like, oh, that was always there.
Yeah.
It's like, you just didn't see it that way before. You couldn't see it that way before, because you were coming from a different filter,
Yeah.
So yeah, but we get to change our filters. That's the thing. We get to make the filter, change the filter, create anything we want. And that's really the beauty of it. And that, I believe, is also this, place where we're this juncture that we're in our evolution right now, and not just consciousness, but the multidimensional spaces of our own being. So just tapping into like these awarenesses, like your intuition. People before might have been like, oh, well, that's designated for a certain kind of person or a certain kind of activity, but now people are feeling it more like within themselves. And we've heard of stories about all different kinds of programs where people kind of had more telepathic capabilities, and all these other kinds of capabilities that people considered superhuman, and our governments all over the world have used people who are adept at some of these things to help them and inform them and, you know, steer them or whatever. But honestly, these are just these latent capacities that all of us potentially have as human beings. I mean, we have powerful minds that science is just beginning to scratch the surface of it. And I'm excited about that because there's quantum sciences in every field now, including biology, physiology, you know, connected with the astronomies. I mean, just physics, everything that you can think of is connecting us again in this way and bringing it down from the, you know, or out of the microcosm to the macrocosm, you know, and finding that reflection in all of it. So it's really, it's so universal, so grand, and you know, I just find so much wonder in it, you know, and it's like right here, you, me, right here. This is a wonder of a being that we are and the miracle we are, you know. Yeah, so I would just say find all the things that can help to expand that consciousness, bring you into that greater awareness. Definitely, you know, there's so much education that we offer with PureEsperanza from global leaders and educators and healers and practitioners. And I've always equated healing and education synonymous with one another, because on this much greater scale of our evolution, every one of us as human beings, you know, we want to bring it to, like, you know, a soul that's coming to the earth kind of thing, is here and is ultimately learning and growing and transforming. And there's a good part of healing that has to take place for that learning to be continually unfolding. So
let's think back. You know, I'm sure this was a long time ago, but when did you become passionate about your focus? Like, was there a certain moment that just light bulb went off, or is this just like a lifelong thing that you've been
yeah,
doing?
that's interesting. So I would say that for me, there was, you know, an awareness that was there as a child, and then I think I disconnected from that. I think around the time that, you know, kind of more when that critical analytical thinking starts to happen, and there were lots of discrepancies. I'm sure some of you can relate to that, you know, of how you know, ideally see life as a child in one way, and then, you know, you're hit and confronted with different things that occur in your environment around you. And mine wasn't a real pleasant environment, in the fact that I was, you know, experienced a lot of different racial kind of disturbances because of the fact that I was a Latino in a very Anglo community back in a time when, you know, the civil rights had just gone on not too long before that, you know, so this is the early 70s. So, you know, the marches and things like that had just gone on a few years before that, you know, and there was a lot of misunderstanding still, so the evolving consciousness there. And then within my own family system, there was dysfunctions, you know, that kind of thing. And so there's, you know, these are the kind of awarenesses, and I'm sure all of us, you know, have different childhood experiences, but for me, I'm aware that I was perceiving different things already. So there was already contradictions, and those contradictions were always like standing out in my mind. And I definitely at one point, you know, doing that straight A, perfect attendance, all those kinds of things. I definitely at one point in high school, I was like, that's it. Forget all this. And I say forget with an F and the other F too on all of this, you know, and that's it. And I made a decision that I was going to walk this other side. So I'm sure there was a lot of pain going on there, but it was definitely a walk towards, you know, the dark side, you know, so that entailed drugs, promiscuity, you know, all kinds of different things that were going on at that point in my life. And obviously circles that weren't going to elevate me in any kind of way, you know, or be of assistance in that way. But it was more of that likeness attracts likeness, you know, so thoughts go dark, you start to attract those things, you know. And then I had a life-threatening disease. And I would say that there was shifts going on. So there was always these like background check-ins that were happening for me. Like I would be here and then I would be back over here. And if any of you are familiar with Fiddler on the Roof, Reptavia, the father, is doing that all the time. He's, his daughters are confronting him with all these like questioning his belief systems. And every time he kind of steps back, like it could be this, or it could be this other thing that his daughter is saying, and that's how I felt all the time through those experiences or through that journey, that I was stepping back, looking at those pieces of my life. And then when I had that life-threatening disease, they thought it was leukemia or cancer, different kinds of things. It turned out to be an immune disorder, and put me on a track for like a year of steroids and things like that. But, all the testing done and things like that, like the bone marrow testing and all those things were, for a period of time, it was really shaky, not sure what they were going to do. And even the steroid treatment and things like that wasn't pleasant. It, put my body through a lot of changes. But at that moment was, I guess, that catalyst that was kind of like, oh yeah, something snapped and was like, I definitely went through the bargaining, like I remember I'll like straighten up my act. If I can just have life, I will like be committed towards serving the light. But that whole idea of serving the light for me has been like, it's not just this time. It's like, even being, a child, I that's what I was brought into. There was a way that I was brought into that. I happened to have a father who had some understanding of that. I believe there were good people around me that had some inkling of that. I definitely feel like I had my guardian angels around me. I didn't know all that then. It was much later in life, that specific people even that I just didn't know then, that later on I was like, they were there, they were definitely my angels. And of course I did have a connection with the spiritual world. So there were always different guides that I felt I was connected to along the way. But when I shed all of that, even all that bargaining and all that, and just got back to that truer self and wanted to heal the part of me that hadn't trusted about what I came to do in this time, and allowed myself to move towards that. And this wasn't like, okay, I trust, and now I can like, it's all done. It began that journey that I would say hasn't detracted from that point. Now, there's been different things along the way that have pivoted, like the 30-year marriage that, didn't end up being, a partnership for life, trials and tribulations with my children or things, because, that old saying, what you resist will persist. Absolutely, until you can clear it out, so things like me having run away when I was 14, or me having done drugs, or all those things, there were some of those things, in my own life with my own children. I'm happy to say that all my children are well at this time, but during those early years, it wasn't, I had a daughter and then some sons, but coming through some of those experiences at that time, with my sons especially, there was it was very scary at that time. There was a lot of prayerful moments of like, the choices I had made, how, what I was trying to help them to understand, and all those kinds of things. But looking back on it, and I think they can say this too, I really feel that, I made the choices that I needed to, always with the highest intention. And I realize that's true. And I think that that's a really critical part to healing the past wounding that we've had from our parents, and things like that. Everybody is doing the best that they can with what they got, For me, it was a very conscious work that I was bringing my kids for. So I'm sure they felt a lot of, push to towards that awareness and awakening of, whatever practices they are. But I'm happy to say that all of them have found their way in their own way into a greater well-being, and to understanding some of those holistic principles in their own way. So, yeah. But a lot of traveling, a lot of journeying we do.
Yes. So when you first started in your journey, what was something more challenging than you had expected?
I would say when I realized, for a long time, I just thought like, this idea of like raising our consciousness, or I think there's a lot of terms for it out there. So I don't want anyone to get hung up on the terms. I'm just going to use a term, and then you think about it as whether it's the highest version of yourself, the best version of yourself, your illuminated self, your ascension self, your whatever you want to call it. But for me, it was an ascension and working towards that. And I think that I presumed that that would just be something that like, that mind of my 20-year-old mind was kind of like, you just get it done, it's like, I can do that, no problem, and I think I kind of lived in the unconsciousness of thoughts and beliefs for such a long time that when I finally like woke to the fact that like, oh, this is really a lot of work, that it was like, oh, I couldn't possibly get that done in a lifetime. And then it was like, ooh, I can't get it done in a lifetime. And then it was like time with that, like, all of this is like cultivating. Like, I feel like literally how like plants grow like under the ground, it's like, it's cultivating, germinating, doing all of that stuff. And then it comes to another place and it's like, wait, but if I'm consciousness and I'm part of like infinite consciousness, I'm an expression of consciousness in this time. And perhaps there is no time. What is time? Those kinds of questions. So that kind of existential questioning about what we're here doing, how we're doing it, what exists, what is a reality, all these kinds of things began to impede on me more from an inner place. And I think age does do that to us as well. But it was coming more from an inner place rather than from all the textbooks and the teachers and everything that I had read. Like, now they weren't concepts anymore. Now they were integrated of something coming out of me. And this is what I think was that, so that was the harder part in recognizing that at one moment, all that time that I had spent, like so much energy, so much time learning so much things, like just consuming so much, wasn't it. That was just like part of what, and I'm thankful, so thankful to all of it, to all the teachers, to all the everything that's been out there in the journey, but it was only part of it, because it always is going to come back to you.
Right. Wow, it's beautiful. Now, what practices or techniques throughout your day help make your day a success?
Oh, that's a great question, Tim. I would say for me, I feel like I joked with you, I think when I first met you, said I came out of the closet as an energy medicine practitioner. So all my life I was practicing this energy medicine and, laying of the hands and Reiki type of, work, all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't my vocation. I was going to school as a teacher, but there were all these integrated pieces of spiritual science. But for me, that was always there. Metaphysics was always there. My father was a metaphysician. It came through, that was always there. So, but it was kind of like, what I did in my own home kind of thing. I didn't take that out, and then when I came out with that and I actually started studying with the Four Winds Society and the Light Body School and certification training for shamanic, master shamanic certification, it became like, it was really like it was not on the tip of my fingers, it was in my fingers, it was like, it was my language, it was like, everything was there. It was something that I'm very familiar with and done for a long time. So part of my daily practices are when I open my mesa, and I do that in different ways. Sometimes I have a whole lot more time to sit down and open my mesa and put out my kuyas, which are my stones. They're all the stones from the different directions that carry my medicine. And they're attributed to a medicine wheel. And that medicine wheel is a transformational journey in and of itself. And cultures all over the world have had these kinds of medicine wheels. I work out of the South American medicine wheel, but I'm very familiar with the North American medicine wheel from intuitive recall. And the North American medicine wheel has the same kind of thing. And there are all these lessons about like things we've talked about, like how to shed things, how to release things, how to transform things, how to walk fearlessly with certainty, non-doing in comparison to being, non-engagement, with what triggers and what moves that. And that isn't always the external things as much as the internal thoughts and things like non-engagement, being able to have transparency and integrity and to have that stillness and extract joy out of life, and how to have the beginner's mind all the time, how to live consequently, and then how to enter a space where we circle around, and we don't just circle around once, we circle and circle around because we get into deeper and deeper layers of our own self, which is that infinite space of consciousness or consciousness itself. But eventually in these deeper, in this deeper work that we do within ourselves, we come into no time, no space. How do we own all our own projections, which are ultimately all the realities we create, everything we're seeing here? And then how do we actually come into the alchemy, that inner alchemy, which, again, ascension, alchemy, transformation, highest version of ourselves, whatever. But how do we come into this awareness? And then we begin to have shifts. But it's happening all the time in so many ways.
So would you say that's the meaning of life? Is this alchemy, this transmutation of our surroundings, of everything that's going on to us and around us and inside of us? Is that the meaning of life?
I would say that for me, it holds meaning in my life.
Yeah.
Holds a primary meaning in my life. I don't know, I can't speak to what everyone it is for them, because it's out of the consciousness that we exist in this moment, that we're perceiving our reality. And we have to come through that, in every way, so someone who is perceiving their homelessness on the street, and I've worked with homeless people extensively in a program in Chicago, and it's interesting to hear their stories, because it's not, from the outside, it's not what people might presume is why they're homeless.
Right.
There's lots of different people, and I've met some of the most highly intelligent and educated people that are homeless.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been schooled by them, like sitting in a literary group with them, doing reading where I'm bringing the literary material, and they're like surpass me, like I'm in graduate course here with PhD people,
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's their language, they're talking in that way, so it's like, so whatever reality we're existing from is what holds the meaning for us in that moment. So I would say that my understanding is that we're all here learning and growing as expressions of consciousness. And I hold that open to how that evolves and moves for us. And I think that's even a new place that I can say today from last year has changed. That right now I feel that nothing can be kept. Nothing can be put into we want to do that. And we probably feel like it feels much safer and much better and much more secure if we can do that. But at this moment, I'm losing the fear about not doing that.
Yeah.
That it's okay to just leave it completely open. I don't know if you're familiar with, and again, I'm sure people are going to have all kinds of ways that they perceive it, or if they like it, they don't like it, whatever. But Everything Everywhere All at Once was a movie that came out and won a lot of Emmys last year. And we just happened to fall into seeing it by some chance. And it was something that really explored like all these facets of what we're talking about right now, as far as existentialism and just like, what is the meaning of life kind of thing. But I think it presented lots of beautiful opportunities for every one of us individually to explore those questions within us. And that's when you know that there are things really shifting, when the questions they arise from within us. And then we have a response from within us.
Sure.
So that's the beautiful thing. So that's what holds a lot of meaning for me. And so part of my work, I said, every day is opening my mesa in some way. And sometimes it's, just sitting down. Sometimes it's going outside, and just looking to all the directions. I would say it's really continuous all day long. I mean, I find myself looking at the sun and thanking the sun. I find myself looking at my cats that, I find it in the embrace of my husband. I find it in a phone call with my children, the time that I got to spend with my granddaughter and peering into her eyes.
Yeah.
In the gaze at a flower, walking under the light mist coming down last night, under the new moon energies of today, I mean, it's everything. It's in the bite of food that I take, it's in the song that I hear that, makes me feel like dancing, it's in a piece of art. It's everywhere. It's in me sweeping the floor and doing this task that actually has so many other pieces to it, that I think back to mentors that I had that were doing these rhythmical tasks with children as a curative work, and, understanding the concepts and things like that, but now sweeping and going, I understand this.
Yeah.
Understand what this is doing. I understand that these rhythmical tasks of mundane life, so to speak, can actually be transformed into purposeful, meaningful, meditative states.
Yeah. 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 One of my first jobs was at a feed store loading feed for animals and ranchers or what have you. And sweeping was like the main thing to do if you were not working. And I just used it, I was always like a very hard worker and wanted everything to be better than I received it. And so I would get into a meditative state with that sweeping. And it's just like these things that stick with you for all these years. And it's like, there's pleasure in, even like you said, the most mundane of tasks. And if you can find that peace and that pleasure in the mundane, then it just makes life so much better.
Oh, for sure. Right here with you, brother. Yes, absolutely. And yes, and I think that the simpler, I think in many ways, when people have lived simpler lives, they've been able to often tap into that appreciation, or especially, I feel like, one of the things that my older children especially received from going off the grid for almost 4 years, when they came back into quote unquote civilization, it was just like, for a while, that idea like, oh, I have running water, I have whatever, all the different things that we went through that time, like harvesting beans is now harvesting the beans. It's not like you just like take out the beans and you cook beans, it's like that bean, wait, don't let that fall on the ground, don't lose that bean,
Yeah.
Everything is like precious when you're growing your own food kind of
Sure.
thing, but there's all the ways we get to experience how we appreciate life. I mean, so many people have illnesses, physical illnesses, and can attest to how thankful they are for health, or appreciate that. And so I think we just find it in so many different ways, and life teaches us in so many different ways. I mean, that's the part of being, is like, regardless, we're going to get it one way or another. We're here, and it's coming for us, we're coming to it. It's we're coming to this greater understanding, in different ways.
I've talked to a few other guests about this, but early on in my life, I was sick with asthmatic bronchitis.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you know what that is, it's like your lungs filling up with mucus. And so, when you're 3 years old or so and dealing with this, some of my earliest memories are laying in a bed looking up and just, looking up at the ceiling and just like coming to terms with death.
Yeah.
And, at one point probably dying because you have no air, and it's like, I never found other people that really appreciated life as much as I did, and just appreciated this gift that we all have. And it's like, just growing up and just, kids don't have to deal with that. Maybe some older people have experienced these near-death experiences, but I didn't find any peers, any children that really could, I don't know, I really resonated with, I guess you could say, because they were just so on TV, or they're worried about what's on TV, and I'm just enjoying life and conversations and, you know, meeting people and, you know, and just appreciating it. And I just, you know,
What a gift. What a gift. I mean,
yeah,
I've that kind of story from people I've worked with and clients I've had too. You know, sometimes when people come from other conditions, other locations where it's, you know, war-ridden or, you know, on the streets of Chicago. I mean, like I
yeah,
said, I've worked with homelessness, I've worked with at youth risk. So I was in social services before I went in education, but then after I stopped teaching, I worked with several nonprofits. So some of those were, you know, in the inner cities of Detroit and Chicago also, and just being able to, you know, when people are, when you're put into a survival mode, be it from physical aspect of your own system going down, cancer, you know, kids with cancer, you know, or disease or sickness, whatever it is that they have, or people that are in survival mode because of their conditions, like, you know, poverty or war,
environment, yeah,
yeah, environment. I mean, there's warfare going out on the streets of, you know, most inner cities somewhere, you know what I mean? So, or other countries, you know, I've recently I've had some different colleagues who have come from different areas of the parts of the globe, you know, where it's generations now that have known nothing but that kind of survivor mode that they're in. And it does two things, you know. It either makes someone feel bitter about their experience, or it triggers them to have an immense thankfulness, appreciation for life, you know.
yeah,
So it's interesting which way it goes for people, you know, but
yeah,
thankfully, and what a gift it was for you, you
yeah,
know.
yeah. I got bitter as well, you know, in my teen years, and like you, I kind of fell off into, you know, and I found it was probably after my grandmother's passing away that I just kind of really went into this like gang mentality, and you know, we didn't have much, so you know, I left home at 16, you know, and but I always had this, I always wanted to do good by people. I always wanted to, you know, good things to happen. But, you know, like you said, being in the inner cities and stuff, you just, you know, I grew up in South Houston, and, you know, if you're not, you know, flicked up with somebody, then you're probably going to get jumped being a white dude in the ghetto, you know. And
Yeah.
so, you know, I kind of started running with those people and doing those type of things, and, you know, and you just, thankfully, you just, like you said, you got these guardian angels that are watching over you, and
Sure.
you know, even though you're in the survival mode, if you will, you still find a way to survive, get by, do better, and keep growing and learning.
Yeah, for sure. You know, it's great that you say those stories. And, you know, every time I hear things like that, I think to myself, you know, what is it that makes that difference between, you know, the choices that we take, that we make. But I'm sure there's so many people out there, and I would want that, like your words, what you shared, what I've shared, that people understand when you look out at the world, you know, that everybody has a different story, you know. It's like it's not to so in my work, it's never about, you know, becoming the victim of your story or
Right.
attaching to the story so tight that, you know, you don't you don't know life except the story, you know.
Yeah.
um but it is about being able to have an awareness that as we're working through these pieces of the story and transforming the story, that there is a commonality, there's a common ground to all of our experiences. And that, you know, the old sayings like, you know, you can't judge a book by its cover, all those kinds of things. It's like, look at that, you know, the next time you see an elderly person, think that they've had a whole life, all kinds of things that have gone on for them, you know. And even not just for them individually, but the times they've moved through, you
Yeah.
know. I can say that now, you know. I didn't think of it this way, and I'm still gracefully moving into this next stage of life, but feeling it come upon me now. Because I can think like, okay, you know, I was born in the 60s. And so I've seen quite a bit already, you know. And I don't think we were the first ones on the block to get a color TV, but I remember when that happened. I remember still listening to the radio a lot, and then seeing just the changes over the last few decades, from like people were like, what, we went from radios to, 8 tracks to cassettes to, to CDs, whatever, all these kinds of different things, and now people are just like streaming it and all that kind of stuff, But to watch those kind of changes, and of course that technology is much more accelerated, but just to watch those kinds of things.
Well, to now you're the one on the radio, you're the one on the TV now.
Yeah, it's all that changes. I mean, and in the life of my mother and father, they came from Mexico, so they came both from really poverty-stricken areas. My father was 1950, my mother was 1929, so the idea that children worked, it was pretty much lives of servitude in different ways, and what you did to survive, and then coming up to make a better life and all those things. But think about so that's what I'm saying, when you look at elderly people, think about the life that's been lived. When you look at people and you hear them speaking, in broken English and things, think about where they may have come from,
right,
what they may have come through, there's so many different things that happen in other parts of the world that if you don't raise your head and look out to actually understand that people are having majorly different experiences. And the reason for this understanding, or coming into even wanting to tap into this understanding, is to understand it's not just our own individual story. There are all these stories, and we're all under this major transformation, this major evolution that's happening. That's what I believe, that's what the foundation of PureEsperanza really believes, that we are at a juncture in our human evolution, and that consciousness is expanding in a way that has yet to be done, because that's the nature of consciousness itself, is to expand. But we're here now with an awareness to the awareness that wasn't present in previous generations, So that's a new part of a new timeline for, I guess, human history, and I don't mean a linear way either, because it's again, we're exploring to this quantum way. So to be able to make that connection when you're looking out into the world, that alone is going to make you kind of go, well, that is going to make you think, so if that's what they're experiencing, this is my experience. And then you get to those deeper questions about what is real, what is the reality, what is the truth, so to speak, or what is all that about? Because those kinds of things are those are the kinds of radical thoughts that come up from within us, have us question, and have us begin to explore what our systems are, our belief systems. And once we begin to do that, then we actually open the doors, to the idea that it's not so rigid what our experience, what our story, what our belief is. It's not, then we can actually make space for things like compassion and things like finding ways to understand others without necessarily agreeing or disagreeing, but it brings in a more of a feeling of harmony, of peace, to be able to live side by side with one another, So all our experiences bring us different understandings, but this is the thing. And then to find that in yourself, and, on any given day, in any given moment, voila, it comes.
Now, if you ever write another book, what would it be about?
I've thought about that recently, actually. It's funny that you said that, because it was I think I was just sitting on my balcony, and it was one evening, and I was just looking at the sunset, and an idea came, and it was oh, I'll write that book. So these things that come in are right in, they're I always perceive them as they come out of the ethers, and then we suddenly tap into it. But we might not do that for a long time, or who knows, one time, whatever that might be, is. But I think what I would like to talk about in the next book And the way I did the first book was all, like I said, it's kind of an archetype. So it's a story about a third person. Like I never referred to myself as Esperanza. It's she, her, and this girl who goes into this stages of womanhood, motherhood, you know, and is seeking pearls, and then becomes attains becoming like having the mother of pearls. So it's no longer like looking for the pearls, you know, seeking them out. Where are they? It's like you transform and you are now the pearl. So the next step I would think is more into this next piece, which is about this greater connection in this quantum way that we're connected to in a different way. Like in that story, she ended at the point where she understood she could jump off that springboard and now she could create anything. But then once you're in that space and now you see the interconnections all happening, because up until that point, it was more about the story, about transforming the story. And then it's now the next layer, which is that springboard. Now you are into this space of infinite consciousness, and our human minds can't tap into what infinite is, but we start to get this experience of what it might mean. And that begins to shift a lot of different beliefs, a lot of different ways that we think. And then we begin to also understand how much we're thinking as opposed to pure thought. And that's a whole different thing too. And I was just hearing something really powerful yesterday, and I think I posted something on LinkedIn and with some of the other people with PureEsperanza and things like that on different platforms. And it was along the lines of the work of Bruce Lipton, Mark Hyman, Greg Braden talks about this. One of my teachers, Alberto Viola, talks a lot about this, and they're all interconnected. You know, they've all been around for decades. And we think about some of the work that these people have been doing. They've been talking when no one was listening for decades in the 60s, you know, and this is them now. And just now it's like they're gaining recognition, so to speak. But it was the idea of like this infinite possibility of when we start to shift our thoughts and our thinking and how it works on the energetic level, but how we really, when we're thinking, actively thinking, that's one part of our brain, but that we're on autopilot while we're thinking. So that's the unconsciousness is living there in that place where we've substituted our mind thinking, and the creative conscious part of the mind is actually when we bring ourselves into the moment. And that's the being part. That's the part where you're not doing the thinking. And that's a beautiful thing, you know, because we've been really attached to how well we can think, you know. Even our educational system in terms of, you know, formalized education and degree work is all about thinking, you know. And so to shift out of that into a different way, into a different understanding of learning is radical, you know. So I think I'd like to move towards that way that we come into a greater awareness and learning. Yeah, and that interconnection.
That'd be cool.
Quantum way.
Yeah.
Quantum, you know,
I
and
like
connecting more to the quantum sciences, because I think that I find it like it makes me tingle inside to think that like things that have been talked about in the spiritual, you know, paths are now merging with science more and more.
Right.
And, you know, ancient wisdoms, and that's what we really want to do, is anchor ancient wisdoms with technologies, you know.
Perfect.
So bring these technologies forth. Yeah.
That's awesome. Do you have a networking event, book, product, service, invention that we could help you to promote with the audience?
Oh, hey, thank you so much for that. I would say that right now, we are growing PureEsperanza online to bring it into the metaverse. So one of the things that we've been doing is having different free events online, and they're available through our YouTube channel at PureEsperanza, and we're growing that. But most recently, we just did a well-being support series that's really informative. It really talks about like those three brains, the gut, the heart, the mind, how we work at all those levels, but so many other products that we have that are available, but the Wellbeing Support Series is a good place to start to connect with some of those products that we have online. And again, everything is really about the education and how this crosses over and meets you at, wherever you are on your journey, and how you can benefit from it in that way to start improving your well-being today. So the books, transformational, some of them are fictional and non-fictional, so you can just experience a joyful story about transformation from a few different people, different aspects of life, or you can get into the nitty-gritty kind of questions with the backgrounds and spiritual lessons and different parts of transformation and how the body works and all these kinds of things in our books. There's learning tools and programs, so there's summits on there that have been done. Myself, I've participated, other people in the PureEsperanza global community have participated in, people that are really masterful leaders talking about abundance, about wealth, about life. People from all different walks of life, from people with 7 figures to people that have transformed their life from nothing, just so many different pieces on there. We're going to have some more learning tools on there soon. But besides our natural products, we also have healing wearables like this, and really learning about the calibration of how crystals can really be programmed and installed for higher frequencies. I know that you had a guest, she's on our board too, Crystal Sun. So she's doing those binaural beats and things like that. These aren't her jewelry, but these particular designs were created with that in mind. So they are that, they're called quantum stones, and they really come with that calibration so that you can start attuning your chakras and your energy centers into that higher vibration, and for the healing work that you're doing. So lots of different things there: tree essences, sacred Egyptian oils, pure extracts. If you are familiar with Plant Kingdom or plant medicine and you really want to connect with there, some of our other products work with that, from also the lion's mane and different parts of the cannabis, and lots of different things for people to really meet them. Not all the tools are for everyone, and not everybody wants to use all the tools, but it's interesting how we sort of are led into what kind of tools can help us at any given time. So these are all just to help put you on that path of greater well-being, or amplify that, magnify that, expand that out, and just continue to do that for yourself, so that you can have that experience every day of what we just talked about a little bit, to feel that joy.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. Now, what is the best way for the audience to get in contact and get in touch with you? Is it through the website or through LinkedIn? Or
through the website is definitely, I think, a primary source at pureesperanza.org. And then on LinkedIn, we do have a business page there too. You can follow the business page, follow myself too. Twitter, we have an account there. We've left other platforms in the past and just really focused on these now. And I don't even know, I still don't know what Twitter now, X, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
But there's what I feel about those two platforms is that there's lots of really strong integrity-based intention there in terms of our engagement and our communications there. And that's really a powerful tool that we like to use. But YouTube channel is the other one. And there are other series on there too. The one I mentioned is just a more recent one. We have some coming up in the future. And we have some other events that we see ourselves getting more involved with, and new products coming online pretty soon too. So we're excited about that. But yeah, definitely check out the shop and the free resources too, because there's lots of blogs there that are really helpful on a lot of the things we talked about today, and from a lot of different people, as well as the global community. And that's the key piece also, because we're all in this together, and there are so many individuals out there with wonderful services. Read a little bit of their bio, find out what they're about, what they're offering, and that's what we're bringing to really meet you and where you're at.
It sounds like such a beautiful community. I'm sure a lot of people should be joining you. So it's just, you got to get the word out, as much as we can.
Yes. And then, tapping into the metaverse is a whole new thing, so we go there dauntlessly, fearlessly into places, and, and I'm not a techie person, but this is how I've been guided, as to that little piece of what I play in this thing at this time that we're living in. And just so excited to be here with you, Tim, and always making more connections and just finding our way through.
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure, this discussion that we've had, and I can't wait to share it. But this concludes the episode. Thank you so much for your time, Esperanza.
Thank you so much, Tim.
question.